I should have known this Tuesday would be different when the photographer's assistant spilled coffee on my cream-colored coat. But damn, nothing could have prepared me for what happened at Riverside Apple Orchard. "Miss Peterson, we need perfect lighting," Marcus Edwards, the photographer, kept repeating as we set up the charity shoot. Fall colors blazed around us like nature's own Hollywood backdrop. My golden blonde hair caught the afternoon sun just right, and I felt that familiar rush of being exactly where I belonged. The orchard stretched down to a pristine lake, its waters mirror still except for occasional ripples. Perfect for the environmental charity campaign. I was adjusting my designer boots on the wooden dock when the water suddenly exploded. A woman burst through the surface like some ancient sea goddess, dark hair streaming water, clutching what looked like barnacle-encrusted metal. She was magnificent and terrifying, all lean muscle and determined brown eyes. Her wetsuit clung to curves that spoke of serious physical work, not gym memberships. What the hell? I stepped backward instinctively. "Sorry, didn't know anyone was up there." Her voice carried a slight rasp, like whiskey and cigarettes. She hoisted herself onto the dock with athletic grace that made my breath catch. Water pooled around her boots as she set down her find. Some kind of old compass or clock, green with age. Her brunette hair hung in wet ropes past her shoulders, and those brown eyes held depths I couldn't read. "You're dripping on my set," I managed to say. She looked up at me then, really looked, and I felt something shift in my chest. Her gaze moved from my carefully styled hair down my silk blouse to my ridiculous heels, and her mouth curved into something between amusement and contempt. "You're set?" She stood slowly, water still streaming from her wetsuit. "Lady, this is a public dock. I have permits." "So do I." She gestured toward the artifact. "Archaeological salvage permit. Been working this site for 3 months." The photographer was making frantic hand signals behind me. The entire crew stood frozen, watching this standoff between Hollywood glamour and raw authenticity. I felt suddenly ridiculous in my designer outfit next to this woman who looked like she could wrestle sharks. "Well, you'll need to work somewhere else today." Her laugh was harsh as lake wind. "Not happening, princess." Princess. The word hit me like cold water. I straightened to my full height, which wasn't much next to her, and felt my temper flare. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Elena Peterson. I've seen your movies." She picked up her artifact, examining it like it held more interest than I did. "The one where you played the marine biologist was particularly ridiculous." Heat flooded my cheeks. "Excuse me?" "You held the diving mask upside down in 3 different scenes." Before I could respond, she turned and walked toward the orchard, leaving wet footprints on the weathered dock. Her confidence radiated from every step, and I found myself watching the way her wetsuit moved across her shoulders. "Miss Peterson?" Marcus called tentatively. I spun around, nearly losing my balance on the slick planks. My heel caught in a gap between boards, and suddenly I was falling, arms windmilling uselessly. I crashed into a pile of apple baskets that some farm worker had left near the dock. Apples scattered everywhere, rolling across the planks and splashing into the water. Red and golden fruit bounced off my designer clothes, and I landed in an ungraceful heap, skirt hiked up, dignity completely shot. The woman who'd caused this chaos turned back at the sound, and for a moment her expression softened, almost like she wanted to help. Then she saw me struggling in the apple pile, and that hard smile returned. "Welcome to the real world, princess." She walked away, leaving me sitting in fruit and humiliation, with lake water lapping at the dock and my entire crew staring in stunned silence. I wanted to scream, to throw apples at her retreating form, to demand she come back and face me properly. Instead, I sat there breathing hard, watching her disappear between the apple trees, and wondering why my heart was pounding so damn fast. The next morning, I returned to Riverside Orchard with a different strategy. If that arrogant diver thought she could intimidate Elena Peterson, she was dead wrong. I dealt with temperamental directors, hostile critics, and paparazzi. One waterlogged treasure hunter wasn't going to derail my charity campaign. I found her gear spread across a picnic table near the shore, neatly organized like a military operation. Tank, mask, flippers, and that same artifact from yesterday, now cleaned to reveal intricate brass workings. A marine archaeology textbook lay open beside it, pages fluttering in the morning breeze. "Looking for something, princess?" I spun around. She emerged from behind an apple tree, wearing jeans and a faded university sweatshirt that somehow made her look even more attractive. Her dark hair was pulled back, revealing the strong line of her jaw. "My name is Elena. Use it." Elena. She drew out each syllable like she was tasting wine. Pretty name for a pretty problem. "I'm not the problem here. You are." I gestured toward the lake. "This shoot raises money for environmental protection, children's programs. You're interfering with actual charity work." Her brown eyes flashed. "And what do you think I'm doing down there, playing with fish?" "I have no idea what you're doing." "That's obvious." She moved closer, and I caught a hint of lake water and something woodsy. "I'm documenting a 19th century shipwreck before developers destroy it. Ever heard of historical preservation? Developers? Morrison Holdings wants to build luxury condos right here." She pointed toward the pristine shoreline. "They'll dredge the bottom, destroy everything. This wreck is the only thing stopping them." Something shifted in my chest. I'd fought Morrison Holdings before, when they tried to tear down a community center in my old neighborhood. Ruthless bastards who saw dollar signs where others saw history. "So, you're saying—" "I'm saying your photo shoot is cute, but my work actually matters." The dismissal stung like a slap. "My work matters too. To your ego, maybe. To the kids who'll benefit from this campaign." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay composed. "But you're too busy playing underwater explorer to care about real people." Her face darkened. "Real people? Lady, I grew up in Columbus. I know exactly what real looks like." "Then why are you sabotaging something that helps?" "Because 15 minutes of you posing with apples won't save anything." She stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet her eyes. "But that wreck down there? That's 300 years of history. That's proof this land meant something before Hollywood princesses needed backdrops." "I am not a princess." "No." Her gaze moved over my silk blouse, my designer jeans, my perfectly styled hair. Could have fooled me. Heat flooded my cheeks. "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." She turned toward her equipment. "I know you've never worked a real job. Never had dirt under your fingernails or calluses on your hands. And you think that makes you better than me?" She paused, tank halfway to her shoulder. "It makes me real." The word hung between us like a challenge. I wanted to argue, to tell her about the foster homes, the casting couches I'd refused, the years of waiting tables between auditions, but something in her posture warned me she wouldn't believe it anyway. "Fine," I said instead. "But I'm not leaving." "Neither am I." We stared at each other across the morning light, neither willing to back down. Her jaw was set in stubborn lines, but I caught something else in her expression. Respect, maybe, or at least acknowledgement that I wasn't running away. "Then we're at an impasse," I said. "Looks like it." She hefted the tank onto her back with practiced ease. "Try not to fall in any more fruit." She walked toward the water, wetsuit unzipped to her waist, revealing a tank top that clung to curves I definitely shouldn't be noticing. At the dock's edge, she turned back. "Elena? What?" "The Morrison Holdings meeting is Thursday. City Council chambers, 7 p.m. If you actually care about this place." She slipped into the water before I could respond, leaving me standing among the apple trees with more questions than answers. The artifact glinted on the picnic table in the morning sun, and I found myself wondering what secrets lay buried beneath those dark waters, and why I suddenly wanted to know everything about the woman who'd discovered them. Thursday night, I found myself in Columbus City Council chambers instead of at a Beverly Hills premiere. The irony wasn't lost on me. Gabriella Hill sat 3 rows ahead, her dark hair catching fluorescent light as she leaned forward to speak with other community members. She looked different in a blazer and slacks, professional yet still carrying that undercurrent of raw energy. When she stood to address the council, her voice carried clearly through the small room. "Morrison Holdings claims their development will benefit Columbus," she said, holding up photographs. "These images show the shipwreck site. It's a piece of our history that can't be replaced." Her passion was magnetic. She spoke about the vessel's origins, cargo manifests, the families who'd lost everything when it sank. Not just dates and facts, but human stories that made the past feel immediate. Morrison's lawyer countered with economic projections and job creation statistics. Cold numbers versus living history. The council members looked torn. "We'll table this pending further environmental impact studies," the chairman announced. Outside, rain pelted the courthouse steps. Gabriella stood under the overhang, shoulders set in defeat. "That was good," I said, approaching carefully. She looked up, surprised. "You actually came. You challenged me to." Lightning split the sky, followed by thunder that made us both jump. The rain intensified, driving sideways in sheets that reached even our covered position. "Damn," she muttered, pulling her blazer tighter. "There's a barn at the orchard," I said impulsively. "My driver can take us." She studied my face in the strange orange streetlight. "Why?" "Because we're both getting soaked." The ride was silent except for rain drumming the roof. My driver dropped us at the orchard's gate, promising to return in an hour. We ran through the downpour to an old red barn that smelled of hay and apple cider. I fumbled for the light switch while Gabriella shook water from her hair. The single bulb cast everything in golden shadows, making the space feel intimate despite its size. "Better," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. I noticed her shivering and found a horse blanket on a nearby shelf. "Here." Our fingers brushed as she took it, and I felt that same electric awareness from the dock. She noticed too, her brown eyes meeting mine with new wariness. "Elena?" "I looked up your work," I interrupted. "The shipwreck research, it's impressive." She smiled, the first genuine one I'd seen from her. "Most people find it boring." "Not me, the way you talked about those families tonight." I moved closer, drawn by her passion. "You made them real." "They were real. The Hendersons, the Clearys, 3 children under 10. Her voice softened. "They matter. Like the kids my charity helps matter." She nodded slowly. "I was wrong about that. About your work not meaning anything." We stood there in the warm barn light, rain pounding the roof above us. Her hair had dried into soft waves that framed her face, and I found myself studying the curve of her mouth. "Gabriella?" "Gabby. My friends call me Gabby." "Are we friends now?" "I don't know what we are." The honesty in her voice made my chest tight. She was right. We existed in some undefined space between antagonists and something else entirely. Thunder crashed overhead, making us both laugh at our jumpiness. But the laughter faded when I realized how close we were standing. Close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her skin, to catch that scent of lake water and something uniquely her. Elena. My name was barely a whisper on her lips. I reached up to touch her cheek, fingers tracing water droplets still clinging to her skin. Her eyes fluttered closed at the contact, and when they opened again, something had shifted between us. "This is crazy," she breathed. "Probably." But neither of us stepped back. Instead, she lifted her hand to cover mine, pressing my palm against her face. Her skin was warm and soft, so different from the tough exterior she showed the world. The space between us dissolved. Her lips found mine in a kiss that tasted like rain and possibility. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper as I wound my arms around her neck. She pulled me closer, and I felt the strength in her hands. The same hands that handled ancient artifacts with such careful reverence. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. "This complicates things," she murmured. "Everything worthwhile is complicated." Outside, the storm continued its assault on the barn roof, creating a cocoon of sound around us. But inside, something had changed fundamentally. The woman I'd seen as my opposite, my obstacle, was revealed as something else entirely. Someone who might understand the loneliness that came with being constantly in the public eye, constantly performing. Someone who fought for things that mattered, just like I did. Someone whose kiss had awakened something I'd forgotten how to feel. The next morning I found myself at Riverside Orchard before sunrise, drawn by something I couldn't name, or wouldn't name. From the shoreline, I watched Gabby prepare for her dive, moving with practiced efficiency in the pre-dawn light. She slipped into the water without noticing me, disappearing beneath the surface like she belonged there. I settled onto the dock, telling myself I was just curious about her work, nothing more. Minutes passed. Then she emerged 20 feet out, treading water as she examined something in her hands. Even from a distance, I could see her excitement. She dove again, staying under longer this time, and I found myself holding my breath until she surfaced. There was something mesmerizing about watching her work. The way she moved underwater with perfect control, how she handled each artifact like it held secrets worth protecting. She was in her element down there, graceful and powerful in ways that made my chest tighten. When she finally climbed onto the dock, she startled at seeing me. "How long have you been there?" "Not long." "Find anything interesting?" She showed me a corroded brass button, eyes lighting up as she explained its probable origin. Watching her passion was intoxicating. This wasn't performance or artifice, just genuine love for her work. "Want to see something?" she asked suddenly. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She led me to a waterproof case where she kept her most significant finds. Each piece had a story, a connection to lives lived centuries ago. Her knowledge was encyclopedic, but she shared it like secrets between friends. "You really love this," I said. "It's the only thing that's ever made sense to me." She looked up, meeting my eyes. "What about you? What do you love about acting?" The question caught me off guard. Most people assumed they knew, assumed it was about fame or money. But Gabby waited for a real answer. "The truth moments," I said finally, "when everything clicks and you're not pretending anymore, you're just being." She smiled, and I felt that dangerous flutter in my chest again. 3 days later, I stood in the Columbus Marriott ballroom, watching donor checks accumulate for the environmental charity. The event was a success. Politicians schmoozing, wealthy patrons posing for photos, everyone feeling good about their contributions. But my eyes kept searching the crowd for dark hair and brown eyes. "Elena, darling, you look radiant." Roy Peterson, the charity coordinator, appeared at my elbow. "The Henderson Foundation just pledged $50,000. I smiled and nodded, playing my part perfectly. But something felt hollow about the whole performance. These people cared about being seen caring, not about the actual cause. Then I spotted her. Gabby stood near the back wall wearing a simple black dress that transformed her completely. Her hair was pinned up, revealing the elegant line of her neck. She looked sophisticated, almost unrecognizable from the wetsuit-clad woman I'd been watching all week. Our eyes met across the crowded room, and that familiar electricity sparked between us. "Excuse me," I murmured to Roy, already moving toward her. "You came," I said when I reached her. "You invited me." She gestured toward the crowd, though I feel a bit out of place. "You look perfect." The words came out more intense than I intended. Her cheeks flushed, and I felt heat rise in my own face. We stood there in the middle of the elegant ballroom, surrounded by Columbus society, and all I could think about was kissing her again. "Want to get some air?" she asked. We escaped to the hotel's rooftop garden, city lights sparkling below us. The October air was crisp, making me shiver in my sleeveless gown. "Cold?" Gabby moved closer, and I felt warmth radiate from her skin. "A little." She shrugged out of her jacket and draped it around my shoulders. The gesture was simple, protective, and it undid something inside me. When she didn't step back, I found myself studying her face in the moonlight. "Elena?" Her voice was rough with wanting. This time, I kissed her first, harder than in the barn, with weeks of tension and confusion pouring out through the contact. She responded immediately, hands sliding into my hair, pulling me closer until there was no space between us. The elevator ride to my room was torture. We stood on opposite sides, trying to act casual while desire crackled between us like static electricity. The moment my door closed behind us, we crashed together again. Her hands found the zipper of my gown, while mine fumbled with the buttons of her dress. Clothing fell away piece by piece until we were skin against skin, exploring each other with desperate curiosity. She was beautiful, all lean muscle and soft curves, scars on her hands from years of underwater work. I traced them with my fingertips, marveling at the stories they told. When she touched me in return, I felt like I was discovering my own body for the first time. We moved together with surprising synchronicity, learning each other's rhythms and responses. She made soft sounds against my throat that drove me wild, and when she whispered my name, it sounded like prayer and profanity combined. Afterward, we lay tangled in hotel sheets, both breathing hard. The reality of what we'd done settled around us like morning light. "I should go," she said quietly. "Should you?" She turned to face me, brown eyes serious. This wasn't supposed to happen. A lot of things aren't supposed to happen. I traced the line of her collarbone with one finger. Doesn't make them wrong. She caught my hand, bringing it to her lips. "What are we doing, Elena?" "I don't know. But I don't want to stop." The letter arrived on a Tuesday, official courthouse seal and all. I stared at it over morning coffee, my stomach dropping as I read the words. Jury duty. Franklin County Court. High-profile murder case requiring sequestered jurors. Damn, I muttered, reaching for my phone to call Gabby. But my attorney got to me first. Marcus Hill, no relation to Gabby despite the shared surname, paced my living room like a caged animal. You can't get out of this one, Elena. The judge specifically requested you after that interview you did about civic duty. How long? Minimum 3 weeks. Could be longer depending on deliberation. 3 weeks without contact. No phones, no internet, no outside communication during sequestration. The timing couldn't be worse. Gabby and I had finally found our rhythm, spending every spare moment together when I wasn't filming or she wasn't diving. I have to tell her, I said, already grabbing my keys. I found her at the orchard, preparing for another dive. She looked up when my car door slammed, smile fading when she saw my expression. What's wrong? I handed her the letter. Watched her face change as she read, jaw tightening with each line. 3 weeks minimum, she said finally. I tried to get out of it. Marcus says it's impossible. She folded the letter carefully, handed it back. When do you leave? Tomorrow morning. The word hung between us like a stone dropped in still water. 3 weeks felt like forever when we were still so new, still figuring out what this thing between us was. We'll manage, she said, but her voice sounded hollow. That night, we held each other until dawn, neither sleeping much. I memorized the feel of her skin, the way she breathed against my neck, storing up sensations like provisions for a journey. The courthouse downtown looked like a fortress. Gray stone walls, barred windows, the kind of place that swallowed people and spit them out changed. My fellow jurors were a mixed bag, retirees, office workers, a teacher on summer break. The case was brutal. A domestic violence murder, husband accused of killing his wife in a jealous rage. The prosecution painted him as a monster. The defense claimed self-defense, that she'd attacked him first. Days blurred together in the sterile jury room. Evidence photos that made me sick. Testimony that kept me awake at night. The other jurors argued constantly, emotions running high as we tried to make sense of what we'd seen. I thought about Gabby constantly. Wondered if she was diving, what artifacts she'd discovered, whether she missed me or was relieved to have space. The not knowing ate at me worse than the evidence. Rough case, said Roy Edwards, the teacher, during a lunch break. Hard to focus on anything else. He was right. The violence, the detailed forensic evidence, the widow's mother sobbing in the gallery, it consumed everything. Even when I tried to think about better times, images from the crime scene photos intruded. 2 weeks in, I overheard the bailiffs talking about a tabloid story. Something about me being spotted with an unknown woman at various Columbus locations. My heart stopped. Later that night, alone in my sequestered hotel room, I stared at the ceiling and wondered what Gabby thought when those photos surfaced. Pictures of us at restaurants, walking through downtown, laughing at something she'd said outside a bookstore. Had she seen the speculation, the gossip columnists trying to identify the mystery brunette in Elena Peterson's life? Gabby valued her privacy fiercely. She'd probably hate being dragged into celebrity drama. The isolation was killing me. No way to explain, no way to reach out, no way to tell her the pictures meant everything to me because they captured moments when I'd been purely happy. The case dragged into a third week. Deliberations grew heated as we debated reasonable doubt versus gut instinct. Some jurors wanted manslaughter, others pushed for murder one. I found myself thinking about justice in ways I never had before. During breaks, I'd catch other jurors whispering about my movies, my personal life, the tabloid stories. Their sideways glances reminded me how impossible normal relationships were when you lived under public scrutiny. Maybe this was better. Maybe the sequestration was showing me what I should have realized from the beginning, that someone like Gabby deserved better than being dragged through tabloid hell. By the time we reached our verdict, I felt hollowed out. The defendant was guilty of voluntary manslaughter, not murder one. Justice of a sort, though it satisfied no one completely. Walking out of the courthouse after 3.5 weeks felt like emerging from a cave. Sunlight seemed too bright, traffic too loud, everything overwhelming after the controlled environment of sequestration. My phone exploded with messages the moment I turned it on. Missed calls from my agent, my publicist, friends wondering where I'd vanished. But none from Gabby. I drove straight to Riverside Orchard, heart pounding with hope and dread. The lake looked different somehow, more remote. Her diving equipment was gone from the usual spot. She left 2 weeks ago, the orchard manager told me when I asked. Took a job in Florida. Something about shipwreck salvage. Florida. She'd left Columbus entirely while I was locked away playing my civic duty. Left without a word, without waiting to see if I'd come back. Standing on the empty dock where we'd first collided, I finally understood. The tabloids, the forced separation, the impossibility of dating someone in my position, it had all been too much. I'd lost her before I'd ever really had her. 2 weeks felt like 2 years without Elena's voice, without her laugh, without those blue eyes that looked at me like I was something precious. I threw myself into deep water diving, pushing limits I shouldn't have pushed, exploring caverns that demanded complete focus. Anything to stop thinking about her locked away in some courthouse. The tabloids found me eventually. Someone had photographed us at dinner, walking downtown, sharing what looked like intimate moments. Elena Peterson's secret romance screamed from grocery store checkout lines. Mystery woman revealed. My name, my profession, my entire private life splashed across gossip websites. Photographers camped outside my apartment, called my dive company asking intrusive questions. The attention was suffocating. But worse than the cameras was the speculation. Headlines suggested Elena was experimenting, going through a phase, that I was just another Hollywood fling. One particularly nasty piece called me a gold-digging nobody trading on celebrity proximity. I deleted my social media accounts, changed my phone number, started diving earlier and staying out longer to avoid the harassment. But the damage was done. My quiet life in Columbus had become impossible. When Ray Edwards from Coastal Salvage called about a lucrative wreck dive in Florida, I jumped at the chance. 3 months away from Ohio, away from reporters, away from memories of hotel rooms and stolen kisses. You sure about this, Gabby? My dive partner Jose asked as I loaded equipment into my truck. Leaving right now seems what? Like running away. Maybe it was. But staying meant living under microscopes. Having my relationship dissected by strangers who'd never understand what Elena and I had found together. It meant waiting for someone who might already be regretting everything. The drive south took 12 hours. I stopped only for gas and coffee, pushing through fatigue like I pushed through water resistance. Florida's humidity hit me like a wall when I arrived in Key Largo, but the ocean stretching endlessly toward the horizon felt like freedom. The salvage dive was supposed to be routine. 18th century merchant vessel, well-documented wreck site, straightforward artifact recovery, but underwater, surrounded by schools of angelfish and the ghostly remains of someone else's dreams, I found something unexpected. Peace. Not the Elena-shaped hole in my chest, not the anger over tabloid lies, just the meditative rhythm of controlled breathing and methodical work. Down here, celebrity gossip didn't exist. Only history and silence and the eternal dance between human ambition and oceanic power. My hotel room overlooked the Gulf, and I'd fallen into a routine of morning dives followed by evening swims from the beach. The work was good, the pay better, and slowly the knots in my shoulders began to loosen. Until Marcus Hill called. Gabby, you need to see the latest round of photos. I'm not looking at tabloids anymore. These are different. Elena leaving the courthouse. I don't care how she looks. But his silence stretched too long, and despite myself, I found the images online. Elena walking down courthouse steps, looking pale and exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, designer clothes hanging loose like she'd lost weight. She looked haunted in ways that made my chest ache. The accompanying article mentioned the murder trial, 3 weeks of sequestration, the emotional toll of deliberating someone's fate. She'd been locked away dealing with violence and death while I'd been nursing wounded pride over photographers. I closed the laptop, walked to the beach, and dove into warm Gulf water until my lungs burned. When I surfaced, nothing had changed. Elena was still in Ohio, I was still in Florida. We were still impossible. But doubt crept in like tidewater, filling spaces I'd tried to keep dry. Days passed. The salvage work continued. I found a ship's bell, corroded silver jewelry, fragments of lives interrupted by storms or violence or simple bad luck. Each artifact told a story of separation, of people torn from loved ones by circumstances beyond their control. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone rang constantly, reporters still trying to reach me, friends back home wanting updates, dive companies offering work. I ignored most calls, but one evening an unknown Ohio number appeared on my screen. My finger hovered over the decline button. Elena didn't have this number, but maybe she'd gotten it somehow. Maybe she was calling to explain, to apologize, to tell me the tabloids were wrong and we could find our way back to each other. I answered. Gabriella Hill? Male voice, unfamiliar. Who's asking? Detective Roy Peterson, Columbus PD. I'm calling about Elena Peterson. My heart stopped. What about her? She's been asking about you, trying to locate your current whereabouts. I thought you should know she's been quite persistent. Elena was looking for me. After weeks of silence, she was actively trying to track me down. The knowledge hit me like decompression sickness, sudden and disorienting. Did you tell her where I am? No, ma'am, that's not my place. But she seemed determined. After he hung up, I sat on my hotel balcony watching sunset paint the Gulf in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere north of here, Elena was searching for me with the same methodical determination she'd once used to master difficult scenes. Part of me wanted her to find me. Part hoped she'd give up. Both parts were lying. It took 3 private investigators and a week of phone calls, but I finally tracked her down. Key Largo, Florida, working a salvage dive for coastal recovery. The flight south felt like the longest 2 hours of my life. I found her boat anchored 2 miles offshore, dive flag fluttering in the afternoon breeze. My charter captain, a weathered man named Jose, shook his head as I insisted he take me out despite choppy seas. Lady's been diving solo all month, he said as we approached the salvage vessel. Real dedicated to her work. Dedicated or hiding. I knew which one it was. Gabby surfaced just as we pulled alongside, her face registering shock through her diving mask. Even wet and surprised, she was still the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Months of Florida sun had darkened her skin, and her hair was longer, wild from salt water. Elena? She treaded water between the boats, looking like she'd seen a ghost. We need to talk. How did you? I'm persistent when I want something. She hauled herself onto her boat's platform with familiar athletic grace, but her posture was guarded. The easy intimacy we'd shared felt like a memory from someone else's life. You shouldn't be here, she said, wringing water from her hair. Where else would I be? Ohio, making movies, living your life. Her voice carried an edge I didn't recognize. Isn't that what celebrities do? Move on to the next interesting distraction? The words hit like physical blows. Is that what you think I was doing? Playing with you? She turned away, busying herself with dive equipment. The tabloids made it pretty clear. Since when do you believe tabloids? Since my face was plastered across every grocery store checkout, she spun to face me, brown eyes blazing. Do you know what it's like having strangers dissect your private life? Having them call you a gold digger, a phase, a stepping stone to someone more important? The pain in her voice made my chest tight. Gabby? No. You don't get to Gabby me. She stripped off her wetsuit with sharp, angry movements. You disappeared for 3 weeks without a word. I was sequestered. No contact allowed. And I was supposed to know that how? Telepathy? She pulled on shorts and a tank top, every motion radiating frustration. The last thing I knew, you were going to jury duty. Then suddenly you were gone, and photographers were camping outside my apartment. I tried to call the moment I got out. Too late. But something in her voice wavered, like she didn't entirely believe her own words. We stood on opposite sides of the boat, the same distance we'd maintained in that hotel elevator months ago, except now the space between us felt like an ocean instead of anticipation. I'm sorry, I said simply. I'm sorry the media found you. I'm sorry I couldn't prepare you for what that meant. I'm sorry I wasn't there when you needed me. She looked away, struggling with something internal. It doesn't matter now, doesn't it? The boat rocked gently in the afternoon swells. Above us, pelicans dove for fish with practiced efficiency, completely unbothered by human drama. Why are you here, Elena? Because I missed you. Because I laid awake every night in that hotel room thinking about you. Because I drove to the orchard the moment I was free and you were gone. I had to leave. I know, but I'm here now. She studied my face like she was looking for lies. For how long? Until the next movie? The next obligation? The next time your real life gets inconvenient? This is my real life. I moved closer, encouraged when she didn't step back. You are my real life. Am I? Her voice was barely audible over the water lapping against the hull. You're the only thing that's felt real in years. The admission hung between us like a confession. Her expression softened slightly, and I saw glimpses of the woman who'd taught me about shipwrecks and kissed me in a rain-soaked barn. The jury duty broke something in me, I continued. 3 weeks of violence and hatred and people making impossible decisions about other people's lives. All I wanted was to come back to you. But I wasn't there. No. And I deserved that. I reached for her hand, relief flooding through me when she didn't pull away. But I'm here now. We're both here now. Her fingers were warm and calloused, familiar despite the months apart. She looked down at our joined hands, then up at my face. This is crazy, she whispered. We established that months ago. Elena. My name on her lips sounded like surrender. The space between us disappeared. This time, our kiss tasted like salt water and forgiveness, desperate and hungry and full of months of separation. Her hands tangled in my hair while mine found the warm skin at her waist. I missed you, she breathed against my mouth. Damn it, I missed you so much. We stumbled toward her small cabin, shedding clothes and reservations equally. The bunk was narrow, forcing us close together, skin against skin under the Florida sun streaming through portholes. Being with her again felt like coming home after a long exile. Every touch carried emotional weight, every kiss a promise that we wouldn't let fear separate us again. When she whispered my name, it sounded like prayer and forgiveness combined. Afterward, we lay tangled together listening to water against the hull. Her head rested on my shoulder, dark hair spilling across my chest. What happens now? She asked quietly. I don't know. But we figure it out together. I want to learn, I said 3 days later as we sat on the dock at Key Largo Marina, watching sunset paint the water gold. To dive. To understand your world. Gabby looked up from the diving manual she'd been reading, surprise flickering across her features. Elena, it's not like swimming in a pool. I know. That's why I want you to teach me. She studied my face, looking for signs of celebrity whim or passing fancy. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. We start in shallow water, pool training first. The next morning found me in a hotel pool, weighted down with unfamiliar equipment, breathing through a regulator while Gabby's voice came through underwater speakers. The sensation was alien and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Breathe normally, she instructed from poolside. Your body knows what to do. But my body was convinced it was drowning. Every instinct screamed to surface, to rip the mask off and gulp real air. I forced myself to stay down, to trust the equipment and trust her. Good. Now try moving toward me. I kicked awkwardly, overcompensating, and nearly face-planting into the pool bottom. Gabby was in the water beside me immediately, steadying me with gentle hands. Her confidence underwater was magnetic. She moved like she'd been born to it, every gesture economical and purposeful. Watching her demonstrate proper form was like seeing poetry written in motion. Better, she said when we surfaced. But you're fighting it. Let the water support you. Hours passed in repetition, mask clearing, regulator recovery, hand signals I'd need to know in deeper water. My muscles ached from unfamiliar positions, but something inside me was waking up. Why is this so important to you? Gabby asked during a break. Because it's important to you. I pulled my wet hair back, meeting her eyes. I want to understand what you love about being down there. And I'm tired of watching your life from the surface. Something shifted in her expression. The guarded distance she'd maintained since Florida began to soften. Okay, she said finally. Tomorrow we go to the reef. The next day brought perfect conditions. Calm seas, clear visibility, gentle current. I suited up with shaking hands while Gabby performed final equipment checks. Remember what we practiced, she said as we prepared to enter the water. Stay close to me. Use your signals. If anything feels wrong, surface immediately. The moment I submerged into open ocean, the world transformed. Gone were pool tiles and chlorine smell, replaced by an alien landscape of coral formations and darting fish. Sunlight filtered down in shifting columns, illuminating a universe I'd never imagined. Gabby swam beside me, pointing out sea fans and parrotfish, guiding me through valleys between coral heads. Her enthusiasm was infectious even underwater, transmitted through hand gestures and the excitement in her eyes behind her mask. 20 feet down, she led me to a small cavern carved into the reef. Inside, the water was perfectly still, creating a natural cathedral of stone and filtered light. She pointed to ancient coral formations, then to herself and me, making the sign for together. In that underwater sanctuary surrounded by millions of years of geological patience, something profound passed between us. This was her church, her sacred space, and she was sharing it with me. When we finally surfaced, both breathing hard from exertion and emotion, I understood what had captured her so completely. "It's incredible," I gasped, treading water beside the boat. "Now imagine finding traces of human history down there, stories waiting centuries to be discovered." That evening, we anchored in a secluded cove and made dinner on the boat's small galley. The sunset was spectacular, but I found myself watching Gabi instead of the sky. The way firelight played across her features, how she moved with unconscious grace even in the confined space. "What?" she asked, catching me staring. "Just thinking about how lucky I am." "Lucky how?" "That you didn't give up on us completely." She set down her wineglass, expression growing serious. "There were times I wanted to. Times I convinced myself you'd forget about me the moment something more interesting came along. Never. I know that now. But sitting in Florida, seeing those tabloid stories, wondering if you regretted everything we'd shared?" She shrugged. It was easier to believe the worst. I reached across the small table, taking her hand. "I've never regretted a moment with you. Not the first day we met, not the night in the hotel, not any of it. Even the Apple incident? Especially the Apple incident?" She laughed, and the sound was like music after months of silence. We sat there as stars emerged overhead, talking about everything and nothing, rebuilding the intimacy that had been damaged by separation and misunderstanding. Later, in the narrow bunk below deck, we made love with a tenderness that spoke of second chances and hard-won trust. Her touch was reverent, like she was memorizing every curve and contour. When she whispered my name against my throat, it sounded like a promise. "This time, we do it right," I murmured afterward, stroking her hair in the darkness. "What does that mean?" "It means no more running. No more letting other people define what we are." She lifted her head to look at me, moonlight filtering through the porthole illuminating her face. "Are you sure? The attention won't stop. If anything, it'll get worse. Let it. Let them talk. Let them take pictures. I'm not hiding anymore." "Elena, I love you, Gabi. I love your passion, your integrity, your stubborn refusal to compromise who you are. I love watching you work underwater and listening to you talk about history. I love the way you make me feel real." The words hung in the salt air between us, honest and vulnerable and completely true. "I love you too," she whispered back. More than I thought possible. 6 months later, I stood in the offices of Oceanic Publishing, signing contracts for a book I never imagined I'd write. Hidden Depths, a journey into marine archaeology, would combine my newfound passion for underwater exploration with stories of the remarkable woman who'd opened that world to me. "This is unprecedented," my editor, Marcus Peterson, said as I initialed the final pages. "A Hollywood actress writing serious nonfiction about ocean conservation? People contain multitudes," I replied, thinking of Gabi's favorite quote. She was waiting outside, having refused to sit through what she called celebrity business meetings. Through the glass walls, I could see her examining maritime artifacts in the publisher's lobby display case, probably mentally cataloging their historical significance. "The advance is substantial," Marcus continued, "enough to fund several research expeditions. Your platform will bring attention to issues that usually only reach academic circles." That had been the point, using my visibility for something meaningful, something that mattered to both of us. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out a second proposal. "I want to establish a foundation, the Riverside Foundation for Maritime Heritage Preservation." His eyebrows rose as he scanned the document. "Elena, this represents a significant financial commitment." "I'm aware of that." The foundation would provide grants for archaeological research, fund educational programs, and lobby for protection of underwater heritage sites. Everything Gabi had been fighting for single-handedly, but with resources that could actually make a difference. When I emerged from the meeting, I found her deep in conversation with the lobby security guard about a Civil War-era compass in the display. Ready? She asked, breaking off mid-sentence about magnetic declination. More than ready. We walked out into Columbus autumn, leaves crunching under our feet as we headed toward my car. The media attention had never completely stopped, but we'd learned to navigate it together. Photographers still followed us occasionally. Gossip columnists still speculated about our relationship, but it felt manageable now. How did it go? Gabby asked as I drove toward Riverside Orchard. Foundations approved. Funding secured. You'll have a real budget for the first time in your career. She was quiet for several blocks, staring out the passenger window at familiar Columbus streets. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Why are you doing this? Because I love you. Because this work matters. Because we're a team now. Elena? Because you were right that first day. Your work is real, and it deserves real support. The orchard looked different in late October, apple trees mostly bare, the lake reflecting gray sky like polished pewter. But the dock where we'd first collided remained unchanged, weathered boards still creaking under footsteps. This is where it started, I said, taking Gabby's hand as we walked to the end of the pier. With you falling into apple baskets. With us finding each other. She smiled, squeezing my fingers. I was so angry that day. Angry at being interrupted. Angry at celebrity privilege. Angry at how beautiful you looked even when you were arguing with me. You found me beautiful even then. Especially then. You had fire in your eyes, determination. I knew you were dangerous. Dangerous how? Dangerous to my carefully ordered life. Dangerous to my assumptions about Hollywood people. Dangerous to my heart. A loon called across the water, its voice haunting and wild. Soon the lake would freeze, forcing Gabby to suspend diving until spring. But she'd accepted a consulting position with the Oceanic Institute, allowing her to travel to warmer waters while maintaining Columbus as home base. Our home base. There's something else, I said, pulling a small velvet box from my jacket pocket. Gabby's breath caught. Elena, what? It's not what you think. I mean, it could be someday if you want, but for now. I opened the box to reveal not a ring, but a small pendant shaped like a diving helmet, carved from what looked like ancient bronze. I had it made from metal salvaged from your wreck site. The first one, where we met. Her eyes filled with tears as she lifted the pendant from its case. It's perfect. There's an inscription. She turned it over, reading the tiny engraved words aloud. Together beneath the surface. Elena and Gabby, October 2023. The date we stopped running from each other. She fastened the chain around her neck, the pendant settling just above her heart. When she looked up at me, her brown eyes held depths I was still learning to navigate. I have something for you too, she said, reaching into her own pocket. A key. Plain brass, worn smooth by years of handling. It's to my apartment, she said. I mean our apartment, if you want. I know you have the house in the hills, but I thought maybe... I kissed her before she could finish the sentence, tasting salt air and possibilities on her lips. Around us, the orchard settled into evening quiet, shadows lengthening across water that held secrets we were still discovering. Yes, I whispered against her mouth. To all of it. The apartment, the foundation, the future, whatever comes next. Even when it gets complicated? Especially then. We stood there as darkness gathered around us. Two women who'd found something rare and worth fighting for. The lake lapped gently at the dock pilings, keeping time like a heartbeat, carrying promises toward whatever lay ahead. Together.